Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I have interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of songwriters about the writing process. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So I've always been interested in treating songwriters the same way that we treat poets and traditional prose writers, as writers, plain and simple. There is no talk of how bands get their name, favorite tour stories, favorite foods, band drama, or anything else. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers as we go deep, deep, deep into the writing process. That's it, nothing else. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it's Stefan Babcock of PUP. PUP's new album is called Who Will Look After the Dogs? And I love that title. It just flows so effortlessly when you say it. But we got into some deep stuff here. And one of the themes of the discussion today, we talked about rituals and places we like to write, things we have to have with us, and how it's important to go out on walks. My gosh, that has been something I've heard so often recently, and how important walks are to the creative process. I feel like everyone has said that to me, that nothing like a good walk that gets the creative juices flowing. But that aside, we discussed the unhealthy way that we attach self-worth and value to what we create as artists. And I wrote a couple of quotes down that you'll hear him say. The first one he said is, trying to write and not have every song be everything has been a big weight off of my shoulders. In other words, and I'll repeat that, trying to write and not have every song be everything has been a big weight off my shoulders. That's a lot of weight, right? If you feel like every song you create has to mean something with a capital S. And he's found that the process has become easier if he's not attaching that value to it. But here's a more direct quote, and this is, I think, really strikes to what we were talking about, and that is, he says, when songwriting is going well, it's the greatest feeling in the world, and when it's not, it's the worst. I assign too much personal value to my creative output, and too much of my self-worth is wrapped up in that in a way that is unhealthy. And I'm going to repeat that second sentence again. I assign too much personal value to my creative output, and too much of my self-worth is wrapped up in that in a way that is unhealthy. That is what I was talking about earlier, that what we create and how we value ourselves, those things are in direct proportion. And I don't think, and you'll hear him say this, that's a healthy way to look at it. So we do get into that. And please stick around to the end, because we have a great discussion about books. He reads voraciously every day. So the latest PUP album, the new PUP album, is called Who Will Look After the Dogs? And here's my interview with Stefan Babcock of PUP. I always start by asking, are you the type of writer, or do you feel it's important to write or create in some fashion every day? Or do you feel like if you do that every day and force it, things become derivative?
I am a write every day kind of guy for sure. I definitely started off not like that. You know, when you start off, I think a lot of people are like, I write when I get inspired. And that's great if you're doing it casually, or, you know, you're comfortable writing like a couple songs a year, which is what I was doing. And that was great. But as soon as it becomes like, oh, fuck, I got to finish an album. Is it okay if I swear a bit?
Absolutely. Someone else asked that lately too. I forgot. Oh, Derek Miller from Sleigh Bells. He's a good buddy of mine. He said fuck, and he goes, wait, is that okay if I curse? But absolutely, yes.
Okay. But yeah, like once you kind of like, all right, well, now there's a label on board, and we have a deadline for this record, and we got to make a record. It's like, I quickly became of the school of thought that I don't write every day of my life, but when I'm in creation mode, I'm writing every day for sure. And I do find that, like, when I start getting in that mode, it takes me like 2 or 3 weeks of writing every day where everything just sucks and nothing feels good. And then once I'm in that mode, for the most part, things tend to flow until I take a step back. And if I step back from it even for a week, it takes 3 weeks to get it back again.
So I have a couple follow-ups. One is, I mean, that I hear that a lot among writers that you've got to start with the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. I mean, not just songwriters, but prose writers will say, like, I think William Faulkner says something about like, take chances, get it down. Don't worry about if it's good at first. Because I think if you think about it, you've got to start with the good stuff. That's a surefire way to go through writer's block. Um, so when you're writing, I guess you're almost expecting that the initial stuff is just shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're always hoping that you're going to sit down and make something awesome, but I think taking that pressure off, especially at the beginning, is like the the simplest way to start going. You know, there's like a this thing where it's like I think a lot of people experience this. I certainly do. It's like when I sit down to if I'm like and I experience it with my bandmates in the jam space too. And we're writing the first song of a record, you know, it's like you want it to be everything. You want it to be emotional but funny and really catchy, but also out there and heavy and like really chill. You know, it's like it just most songs cannot be those things all at the same time. But um, yeah, you just kind of want to accomplish that right at the beginning, and that's like you said, an easy way to kind of mess your mind up. Versus if you've been writing fairly consistently and you blast out a heavy song, you feel good about it, and you don't worry that doesn't. It's not also goofy. It's like the goofy one will come next, you know. So just trying to write and not make every song be everything has been a big thing for me, a big weight off my shoulders.
So is there a period of time when you, or is there a moment where you feel like, okay, now I'm in the groove, like I've gotten to that flow state where now the good stuff's finally happening? Is there, I've never thought about that before, but is there a time when you figure, yep, that's the bad stuff's behind me?
The bad stuff is never behind me. But there's definitely a point where I feel like I'm able to sit down every day and like something decent will happen. It's hard to put value on it. Like I try not to put too much value on it, but I know that I can sit down and something will come out, whether it's like a guitar riff or a good lyric or something, and maybe that something will be nothing because there'll be no other meat on that bone. But I'll just know that there's something in me that uh, is working, and I'm starting to feel good about the stuff that's coming out, whether it's usable or not.
So when you say you write every day, is that because you feel the urge to write every day? Or do you feel like, okay, it's creation time, I need to be writing every day? Like, I guess, or another way to say that is, how often do you feel like you have to write? Like, there's something that I need to be writing right now, rather because of an emotional thing, rather than we got a record coming up, I need to be writing.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the time it starts off by me feeling like I gotta be writing. Um, and I find that for myself, once I'm in that flow state, once I'm doing it every day and I'm feeling good about what's coming, then it happens as like a compulsion. Like I get um you know, it especially happened on our last record. I just got really excited about the material that was coming out, and I just didn't wanna stop, like, I didn't wanna do anything else, I just wanted to write every day, and so it was a complete compulsion, but it didn't start that way, definitely often starts as like a, "I better push myself into this," and I find like, you know, like, I'm sure you've had this experience and probably almost everybody you talk to has experienced it, but, like, when it's going well, songwriting is like the greatest feeling in the world, and when it's going poorly, the f it is the worst. It's like I I assign, too much, personal value to my creative output. Too much of, like, my sense of self-worth is wrapped up in that in a way that's really unhealthy. Um, so it's hard to tell, I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to tell if it's a chicken or egg situation, but, like, I'm creating when I'm feeling good, maybe because I'm feeling good or because I'm creating, I don't know, and the opposite is also very true.
Yeah, I guess, is there an ideal emotion when you're at your most effective as a writer?
Yeah, and just enthusiasm, like, and that doesn't necessarily reflect in terms of like what I'm writing about or the songs that are coming. Like, I am pretty good at digging back onto old emotions that I'm maybe not experiencing that day, but have experienced it. I'm pretty good at tapping into those emotions. But the feeling in terms of being a creative person is like when I'm feeling enthusiastic, when I'm waking up excited to go, even if I'm starting the day with from zero with nothing, no creative ideas. Like if I'm excited and enthusiastic, I know something's going to show up that day. So much about attitude, having the right, like when you feel good, it's about making stuff. You're motivated to make stuff, and it's a cycle. You make something and you feel good about it, whether it's good or not, because you made it, and that feeds into it. And the reverse is also true, I think.
So can you write from a dark place or from a place of sadness or melancholy? Because there are a lot of people that say that I think there's that idea that, oh, writers, you can write yourself out of those dark places. But for some people, it's like, that's the last time I feel like writing.
Mm, yeah. I've had both experiences. Like I've written when I'm in a pretty low place, but I I do think that like if you're constantly thinking about making stuff, like whether it's songs or visual art or writing a novel, it's like I do feel like you're going through life collecting things and paying attention to your emotions maybe more deeply than you normally would, and trying to kind of catalog. At least for me, I'm like when I'm experiencing those emotions, I'm just kind of cataloging them because I find it a lot harder to be productive creatively when I'm at the bottom of the abyss, you know? Um, I just have less motivation and less energy. Um, and when I come out on the other side is kind of where I find more energy and I'm able to tap into those kind of darker emotions if I'm writing a dark song or not. Um, and yeah, that's where the output comes from is feeling okay, for me.
And if I heard you correctly, you're pretty able to harness emotions from the past pretty easily. That to me seems to be difficult, is I need to have the immediacy of that thing to be able to write about it. And it's hard to put myself back in that emotional place that maybe was a while ago. But if I hear you correctly, that's you're able to do that pretty easily. Like you don't need the immediacy. You can create pretty well with distance.
Yeah, that is one thing that I kind of had to learn because um if you're not familiar with our band, we write about pretty dark things, but we do it
Yeah.
from a place of like there's a lot of humor in it and a lot of
Right.
joy. It's really for me like so much of the songs that I want to write are um writing about pain, like, and acknowledging that life can be shit and the pain is real, but also reflecting on it from a different place where you can kind of make fun of yourself. I just think there's like a lot of therapy in that for me. Um, and knowing that those were the kinds of songs I wanted to write, I did have to kind of learn how to like I said, kind of catalog those emotions when they were happening because it's really hard to write like a not self-serious song. It's hard to write a song that kind of makes fun of yourself when you're in the depths of feeling those emotions. So it was something that I did really teach myself to do.
Do you do any other types of writing, like journal writing, anything like that?
Yeah, I do a lot of journaling, as my girlfriend calls it, my dear diary. I do that, and I also I do write songs with and for other people, and both of those things are extremely helpful for me, I think.
Is the journaling a regular thing or just kind of when you feel like writing?
I try and do it every day. I go through starts and stops with it, but yeah, like when I'm it goes hand in hand with that creativity, I think. Like, I think when I'm like in writing mode and I'm like, all right, these next 3 months I'm going to write, I'm going to be writing every day. I'm also journaling every day, and that is really helpful.
Helpful as a songwriter. Do those things overlap then? Do you mine it? Well, I guess, do you go back and look for song ideas, or it's as you're writing, it's wow, I should really put this into a song?
I think it's less of a conscious thing than either of those things. Like I never go back and read stuff or look for song ideas. Although that's not necessarily a bad idea. It's not something I've explored. Um, but I think just I think in a much more indirect way, journaling just like forces you to confront the f- confront your emotions that day. It forces you to really like dig a bit deeper into what you're feeling. Like you wake up and you feel sad or pissed off or happy, and it's like usually a normal day, a normal human being, you would register as that emotion and then you would go about your day, you know? But journaling for me forces me to kind of dig a bit deeper into that and try and sort of find out what's going on underneath the surface. And while that doesn't translate directly into the songs, I think just being more aware and conscious and present of conscious of your emotions and present in your life um, translates into creating and writing stuff, and being more vulnerable and being more open, and also like being able to articulate those feelings better. Because if you don't examine those feelings, how are you going to articulate it in a song where you got two verses and a chorus to make something pop? It's too that's a tall order, you know. But if you're deep in those emotions, examining them every day, when it comes down to trying to put it into a melody in a limited amount of words, you already kind of know what you're up against.
I just interviewed Suzanne Vega last week, and she was talking about, I think she was the one that told me that she journals, but the journal, you have to write everything about that day in, I think, 1 inch of space. And I've never heard of that before. And I thought, wow, only songwriters with the concision that forces that you're forced to do with songs, but you only have 1 inch. I think it's 1 inch. Maybe it's, and that's all you have for every day. Um,
I
which
love
I
that.
don't know. On one hand, it could be maddening. On the other hand, it's wow, talk about forcing you to be concise. So do you have any other page limits, or I mean, I know you do you try to limit yourself, you just go on and on as long as you need to.
I try and the longer I go on, the better I feel about it. I do find that for myself, like, you know, I think the most normal thing is I'll write a page or two, but I think like most of the good stuff, most of the meat, most of the real revelations comes after you've written about all the surface stuff and mundane stuff. So I I like to push myself to keep going and see what else is there, which sometimes feels like a complete waste of time, but sometimes feels like okay, I've uncovered something that I wouldn't have otherwise.
So when it comes to writing, maybe songwriting, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person?
Um, it really depends. It really depends. I think like yeah, I'm trying to think of examples, but it changes every time I write. Definitely when I'm writing on other projects, it's a lot of computer things because lines are moving all over the place, and you know, it's a collaborative experience, and so there's just more of copy paste, try this, try that. But I think when I'm writing alone, there's a lot more pen and paper because uh, I'm putting less ideas down. I'm considering them more in my brain first and then putting them down. So yeah.
Now I'm going to get very specific here, but but you'd be surprised the answers I get. Is there a type of pen and or a color of ink that matters?
Uh, n- n- uh, Black ink is preferable. I, I could work with anything, but black ink is definitely like I would never go buy a blue pen. Uh,
Why not?
that's mental.
So, but see, I love these answers because people never they go, "Oh, it doesn't matter, but it's only black. It has to be black." Or
Yeah.
yeah, I had Jerry Harrison of the Talking Heads on, and he said it has to be a felt tip pen because of the scraping, the sensation of the scraping on the page, which I just love that idea.
That is very specific. I like that. I think like um I, I don't know that I had for a while I only used the notebooks that I know this is a podcast so people can't see me, but the I don't maybe you can explain it. The kind that flip over like this.
Oh yeah, well, with the rings on the top, it's a stenographer's notebook, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. I used that because I was sick of the rings getting in the way of my hand and stuff like that. But um I I do think it's really interesting. I think that like in other ways in life, I'm very, very particular about things in order to be in the right headspace. And I do think that's like such an interesting thing about uh making things. And I think a lot of people, as you well know, like a lot of people have a thing that they have to do. Um and, and there is like I do get it. It's like there's a comfort. This is like you want to feel like you're creating from a sort of safe, comfortable space, and so that totally makes sense to me. I definitely like sit in a specific chair, and you know, I spend so much of my life on tour that when I'm not on tour, think I'm just craving the most consistent situation possible. So I want to drink the exact same coffee every morning from the same mug, sit in the same chair, do the same walk with my dog, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I have so many follow-up comments to this. First of all, so when you talk about comfort, I have very specific story to that. I had talked to a writer recently. No, I take that back. It was an attorney who does a lot of writing all day, and this person has to write with a winter coat 12 months out of the year. Even we live in Washington D.C. in the D.C. area, and even in the middle of the summer, because the winter coat gives them that feeling of security and of comfort when they write. And I don't know how they discovered that, but that blew my mind. But I love that idea. It's not that the coat is giving them more words to say, but it doesn't matter. It's that feeling of comfort and of security that they have. And I thought, wow, that is amazing that they need that thing to be able to write.
Yeah. When you say it was an attorney writing, are you saying like they had the side gig where they were being creative or they were writing for their attorney job?
No, for the attorney job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Must make for some like pretty weird meetings.
Well, or also like just sweating your ass off in the middle of the summer and you're wearing a down coat in DC where it's, I don't care, where the summers are oppressive. Um, but I just love that idea that it's that feeling of security. Um, so and I was going to ask you about the ritual anyway. I mean, I have like for me, um, I mean, you mentioned chairs. So I had Carrie Brownstein on a couple years ago, and there's a couch. I love this story. There's like a shitty couch that she bought on Craigslist that she writes on because she wants the process to feel less precious. So it's intentionally like a shitty couch that she writes on because it makes the process less daunting if you're in this like disgusting couch. And but little do people know, like she's like, oh, I got this on Craigslist for dirt cheap. And this is where she does all of her writing for that reason. That's the exact opposite of the comfort. But it's that, yeah, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, and being in this shitty couch lessens the pressure.
Yeah. I mean, that's its own kind of comfort, you know?
Yeah.
Not
Um,
physical comfort, but yeah.
yeah. And so for me, like I never write and revise in the same place. That's my thing. Um,
You do not.
I do not. If I'm writing in this chair, I'll go revise in another chair. Um, so there's that. Um, I always, before I start to write, I always have to move a little bit. Like I don't want to have been sitting for an extended period of time doing something else before I write. I need to have moved a little bit. But the chair the chair thing is important to me. The other thing is that I learned this about myself, and I'd love to get your comment on this. So I learned this about myself, that if I finish something in the morning and look at it later that same day, I'm still too close to it. My first thought is, well, hell, I wrote it. I'm not getting rid of anything. But if I finish something at night and wake up the next morning, there's something about sleep that gives me a reset that I can be unbelievably aggressive with my revisions that I couldn't have done if I looked at it later that same day.
I love that. That's important thing to know, because what a what a gift to be able to be aggressive um and objective in your opinions on your work, you know?
You have to be. I mean, that's why when I was a professor, I would tell my students the best revision process is the opposite of the writing process. So if you're typing on your screen, you're revising on a piece of paper. You're reading out loud, like you're doing the things, because the closer you are to your writing process, the more likely you are to miss things. So, that's why when you read your writing over and over again, you're not really reading, you're just staring at the words. So part of it is just that reset. But here's the counter to that is I had Mary Timony, the guitarist, on a couple of years ago, and she said that she writes in the morning and then looks at it later at night and I love this, because 12 hours later, it's a different person who's revising it, because she's had life experiences that have made her a different person. So she looks at it as a different person looking at it later at night, which is just was like, blew my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, especially if you're going through lots of moods in your day, like it's probably nice to check in on uh what does the enthusiastic, happy version of me think of this? What does the frustrated, angry, what does a frazzled version of me think of this? Like, yeah, I've never really thought about things in that way. But that does sound really like productive. It also sounds like there's a lot more in what you're talking about. There's a lot more like of a creation stage and then a revision stage. Um, and I I don't know that I really write that way very much. I think I've been trying to get into this mind space, especially when I'm writing with other people, of like, you got to finish the thing and then we'll go back and figure it out, you know? But definitely when I'm writing by myself, that revision and creation stage are sort of all happening at the same time.
Hmm.
Can kind of bog me down a lot at points, for sure. And something that when things aren't going well, I try and get out of. But I would say 90% of the time, I'm kind of doing both at once.
Well, from a writer's perspective, that's the last thing you want to do. Like as a prose writer, I really like, this isn't me, the old English professor talking, but so here's the deal. I told my students, it's not revision, it's revision. It's a new way of looking at something. And if you look at it that way, but no writer will ever say, I revise as I write and I love it. It's always, I revise as I write. Oh my God, how do I stop? Because you don't see things within the context of what's around them when you're spending so much time. Like I'm talking about, if you're the type of writer that says, I'm not going to write this line until that line is perfect. But, I bow at the altar of the novelist Anne Lamott. She's still alive, but she wrote an essay called Shitty First Drafts. And I would assign that to my students. You can find it online, but shitty first drafts is that idea that the first thing is supposed to be atrocious. But listen, the number of songwriters who have told me, that their biggest problem is trying to hack their brain to become less critical as they write. So what you're telling me is pretty common among songwriters too.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, it's not like every line has to be perfect before I can like move on to the next section or something, but it is like a thing where it's like, you know, people, when you're sitting down, you're creating something from nothing. There's a reason that you follow it through to the next step. It's because there is something special that you don't really maybe understand that came out of that first step. And I think a lot of I think what you're talking about is like you get that spark, you get that energy, you follow the whole thing through, then you come back and you try and see if that spark's still there. For me, a lot of it is like you get that spark, that energy, and I need to kind of make sure that there's a spark at every step for me to want to continue. So if I like write a song where it's like the melodies all feel super strong and the chords are cool and it feels like, oh, this might be really good. And so I'm getting to the lyric stage, I gotta be stoked by at least a couple of the lyrics. Otherwise, I'm gonna move on, chuck it in the trash. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It's just like I just need to feel like that little glimmer of something special at every step, or else I give up on the song.
I like that. Yeah, that makes sense. The idea that yeah, you feel like you're on a roll.
Yeah. I also think it's so easy, like, uh, different than prose writing. It's like it's so easy for in songs for like to have one element that's really great. And if the other element is just not, the song is garbage. It's like you can have the greatest melodies, but if the lyrics suck, well, that's not always true for all artists. But for me, you can have great melodies, but as soon as you put the lyrics down, and if the lyrics don't have that spark, the song is bad. It doesn't matter how strong those melodies were. Or if the lyrics are really powerful and you're trying to put it to a melody and it's not working, it doesn't matter. The song's not a good song, you know? Um, so I do feel like, not to say that each one has to be completed in its turn, but each one has to have some sort of vitality to it, for me to think that there's anything there.
Yeah, I think obviously there's more pressure for every line to be good in a song. Prose, you can get away with some shitty lines, and
Well, songwriting, you can get away with some pretty shitty lines. Let's be real. I mean, we've all got those lines buried in there. Hopefully, they don't
fair
show up
enough.
in the chorus. And
Fair enough. Okay, I want to ask you about that chair. How did you discover that chair to be the place that you like to write?
um, you know what? It's not really about what the chair is. It's about having the same chair every day. So I have a couple places that I write in. Like I'm in LA right now, and this is the chair that I write in. It's low, it's comfortable. I like sitting in it. It's as far away from the desk and the computer as I can get in this room. Um, and I write in that chair every day. But like I have a place in Toronto and a place in Northern Ontario, and they each have their own chair, and the chairs are all very different. So it's not uh, the quality of the chair is not important. The important thing for me is like I have that place that I go every morning, and it feels good to sit in and drink a coffee, and it just kind of wires my brain into like, let's go. We're making stuff. I don't watch TV in these chairs. I try not to be on my phone, flipping through Marketplace or whatever in these chairs. That it's about writing, creating, drinking coffee, feeling good, that kind of stuff.
But you're still, I like you said that it's not close to the computer, so there's not that temptation. But I feel like if you really want to remove yourself, you'll not be in a room with it at all, right? So you're not even looking, you can't even look at it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, um, but there is also, complete to the opposite of what I just said. There's also something important to me about being in the room that I make music in. Um, like it's never really worked for me to go to the living room and like try and write there. It's like there's something about this room is set up and uh has the objects in it that make me feel like I'm here to create, and so that is really important. And the computer is one of those tools, but it's also one of the hindrances. So if I can keep the chair and the computer as far apart from each other, but still in that creative space, is gonna just that's kind of the best case scenario for me.
Are you a morning person or night person, or does that matter?
Yeah, morning. 100%. Like not.
Now, define morning, because for some songwriters, morning is 11 o'clock. So define morning.
I'm usually up around like 7:30. Um, yeah, normal days like 7:30. Take the dog. Like I'll drink coffee and write my journal in my chair. First thing, then I'll take the dog out for like at least an hour, come back and get started. That's kind of how it goes for me. I really like to be writing. Like I like to be making music and thinking about that stuff by like 9:30. I run out of energy really quickly in life, and also like my brain, and creatively and otherwise. I feel like I get depleted really fast. So I try and settle in as early as possible, and I am gentle with myself when my brain stops working at 3:30, 4 p.m.
So were you ever one of those write at two? Some people tell, like a lot of writers say, I can't do this. I never could, but 2 or 3 in the morning is the best time because the world is quiet. I could never do that. But were you ever like that?
I've had experiences like that, but they are few and far between, and it's definitely never become habit or anything like that. Um, the the closest thing that I'll say to that though is like I do think having the world feel like it's quiet and settled and no one's texting you and no emails are coming through. It is really important. My version of that is like I'm so lucky. I got this little tiny cabin in the middle of nowhere in northern Ontario that I spend summers in, and it's just dead quiet there, and it's like it's almost uncomfortable, the space that it gives you to think. Like no one wants to be that alone with their thoughts, but there's pros and cons, I guess.
That's a good. I like that line. No one wants to be that alone in their thoughts. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, but I can see that though. Um, but I want to ask you about the dog walking because I find to me there's nothing better to either cure writer's block or to get me started than movement. Some kind of exercise, physical exercise, walking, anything like that. That's the cure all to anything. Whenever I feel like I'm stuck. So is that the same way with you?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, it is kind of just the necessity. Like my dog, I needs 3 hours a day, so that's what he gets. And but yeah, I do feel like walking. Um, Especially if it's not like for me personally on a busy street, like I like to take him on trails, and that's like it really like gives space to those thoughts. I do kind of vacillate between like, do I want to walk with music on or like listening to a podcast, kind of distract myself, take myself away from what I'm doing and just like allow the subconscious to do its thing. I do that sometimes, and sometimes I'll have my earbuds in, and I'll just be listening to nothing, and that's kind of the thing that'll get the juices flowing. So it's different for me every day, but definitely uh, I feel re-energized when I come back from those walks, ready to get to work, less dreading it less if I'm dreading it that morning.
There was a study done at University of Michigan probably about 15 years ago where they studied the impact of exercise on creativity. And this is kind of what you're talking about. And they found that walking in a natural environment was much more productive than an urban environment because in an urban environment, your brain is actually focused on not getting run over by a bus. And so there is actually a fair amount of research behind that, that if you are going to walk to boost the levels of creativity, having your brain, and it makes sense, right? Having your brain in the calmest state it can be is the best, but there's very clear evidence that those things are different. It's not as effective if you're walking in downtown a major city versus, on the trails.
Yeah. Yeah. And I gotta say, I'm just that makes sense to me, and I'm very lucky to not everybody is able to do that every day. So I feel very lucky in my life to have that. But yeah, it makes sense.
I want to ask you one follow up about something we talked a few minutes ago, only because I'd love the answers to this. So, if you're writing with a pen and paper and you don't like something, are you scribbling? Are you just crossing it out furiously so you can't see it? Or is it just a single line so that if you need, you can return to it if you need to?
It's definitely a single line, but I'm not. If I hate it, I'm not returning to it. There's no coming. There's no going back once I've crossed it out. It's like that's that. It's if you can. I think whether this is smart or not, I don't know, but I think if you can identify the things that give you the ick about your songs, um, it doesn't matter if like maybe objectively that line is good, and maybe it's something that somebody's gonna love. But I think for myself, if I can identify the thing that like grosses me out, getting rid of it, exercising it from the equation is the best thing to do because um a lot of the times it's hard to identify why something feels off. And when you do identify it, take action. That's what I think. Like so much so I've realized that so many of my lyrics are garbage based on uh finally getting in front of the microphone and singing them. Where it's like on paper I felt okay about them, and then I go to sing them and the melodies are all strong. I feel good about the melodies, but I get the douche chills with the words coming out of my mouth. And as soon as that happens, it's like the litmus test of like, oh, that's here's what's wrong with it. I got it. So paying attention to your brain in those moments, or I shouldn't say you so much, but for me, paying attention to my brain in those moments is very important.
I've heard that a lot too. That lines that we think are good aren't as good when you sing them the first time. And I'm not a songwriter, never written a song in my life, but I've heard that a lot too. That oh, that's pretty good. And you go to sing it, it's like, oh my God. Um, I guess the equivalent is as a prose writer, good writing is supposed to sound good. It's supposed to be euphonic. And so I do always read my writing out loud. Um, because that helps me catch awkwardness that I didn't catch reading silently.
Yeah. Do you ever write something down and feel good about it, and then feel like when you say it out loud, it maybe feels cheesy or derived or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think because yeah, but I catch those things with distance. Back to what I said, it's got to be, I cannot look at something. I have to give myself a certain amount of time before I can go back and recognize those things. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I feel like most of the things that I write that get published, I look at those things when they're published and I don't look at things too often and go, wow, that's even better than I thought it was. It's always, oh, I would have written that differently if I just had one more day. Um, so, all right, now last question. Um, I do find that songwriters are pretty voracious readers. So how much do you get to read? And if you do you have a preferred genre, type of author, anything like that?
I read a lot. Read every day. Um, in terms of preferred genre, I like to hop back and forth a lot. Like I find like um if I read like a big tome, like if I'm reading something heavy, I need the next thing I read to be like the lightest, like pop lit, like consumable. I also like I read so much, but I also don't have the same sort of judgment on reading that a lot of people do. Like I'll read total crap if that's what I'm in the mood for. And sometimes that's what you need. It's like turn your brain off, read a thriller, read a beach read, whatever. Um, I find if you're just, I find for me, if I'm sticking with one genre, one type of book, it all just starts to get boring and blend into one. So, um, some of my favorite books that I've read in the past year, there's a book called Bewilderment by a guy named Richard Powers who wrote his famous book is The Overstory, which I read and thought it was good, but I didn't love it the way I loved Bewilderment. It's really heavy, but um, beautifully written, and um, I really love that book. And I've been also like I like to dip my toe quite fairly often into horror. Um, and there's a really wonderful novel called The Fisherman that I read this year that's like pretty terrifying, but like not in like a normal horror kind of way. It's very unsettling, and has kind of like feels a bit more literary to me than some of the other horror books I've read, and that's not a judgment. That's just an observation. Um, but yeah, right now I'm reading. Right now I'm on a bit of a um a not comic, like a graphic novel kick, which is I come and go to that genre as well.
So I'm the same way. So a couple of things. I read a couple books at the same time, but they have to be very different. So I'll read like a rock memoir and good fiction book or fiction nonfiction. I can't read two of the same type. But I started some actually I forgot who some songwriter turned me on to that. Now this songwriter I talk to reads 5 books at a time. I can't do that. But yeah, I know that's crazy, but it's the idea that as I'm reading that one thing, the other thing is still kind of stewing in the back of my mind in some place. So I will do that. And the other thing is, um, when I finish a book by an author, my first thought is never, oh, let me read something else by that author. It's I want to get a different voice in my head altogether. So that's why I actually love like short story anthologies because it's 20 different voices. But I'm not at like I always funny because I always ask songwriters who their favorite author is, but I can't tell you who mine is because I don't think I have one because it's always I just want to read a bunch of different people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's really interesting. I don't The only thing I'll read at the same time, I'm usually like a finish the book kind of guy, but I am like when I get into this graphic novel stuff, that's when I'll read two at once because it's such a different experience reading that versus reading a nonfiction or a novel. It's a dense text heavy book is just so different. So it's a different experience. But no, that's very interesting.
But let me tell you this. Let me just offer this to you. I used to be the type of person that I had to finish a book no matter how bad it was because I could not stand the thought of not finishing it. And holy shit, when I stopped doing that, it, it was so liberating. And I think it's funny because I ask people who do that, everyone has a certain amount of pages that they read before they go, okay, do I want to read do I want to turn the page again? Like there's some people say they'll read 50 pages or 75. But if you're the type of person, like I think you said, that insists on seeing a book through till the end, try not. And and there's you're under no obligation to finish those books. And then you can pick up another one. It is so liberating.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta, in general in life, I should get better at letting go of shit. And so maybe this is a good place to start. Like, not finishing the 800-page book that you hate by page 100.
And that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can find all the episodes on all major streaming platforms and also at the Songwriters on Process website. That is at songwritersonpodcast.com. Pre 2020, this was not a pod. I was transcribing all of the interviews. So you can find all of them, hundreds of them, many hundreds of them on the Songwriters on Process website. You'll find both the transcribed interviews and the pod there. Take a deep dive, spend a day. These are great conversations with songwriters just about the writing process. Also, my book, Desolation, a heavy metal memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, is out now worldwide on Hachette Books. You can find it online in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God, and it's his memoir. Again, that is called Desolation, a heavy metal memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari. I am biased, but that's a damn good book. My email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love suggestions, questions, comments. People always email me and tell me who they want to see on the pod next. You never know. Send me an email, ben@songwritersonprocess.com. That's it for me, everyone. Have a great day.